What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Lost Records Bloomin' Rage tape number 1. Give you guys my review. Don't Nod was nice enough to give me a review code for this game, so I had plenty of time to take my time, go through, and really try to experience this thing and give you guys the review. So again, thank you so much to Don't Nod for that. And this was the game a lot of us were waiting for, right? This come down from Life is Strange. Would it be worth it? Is this the return of like Life is Strange 1 and 2. Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, by the way, in my opinion, is the second best Don't Nod game ever created besides Life is Strange 1. So I was freaking pumped. I really, really was. And I gotta deliver slightly disappointing news here. I wasn't blown away. I was not blown away whatsoever. Now, I do think this game has potential, and those are going to kind of be the two different things we look at in this video. Potential and what they have to deliver in the second tape, right? So going forward to April, that's something we'll talk a lot about in the next 2 months. And then also what we got here, right? Because there's kind of a difference. There is a difference between building up and kind of relying on the next part to kind of complete your game versus doing a really good job in tape 1. And I think there were hits and misses in this tape, okay? So firstly, I want to go over some stats for you. I played this on PS5, okay? And I put in about 5.5 hours. Now, they did say that the average length is somewhere between like 10 to 12 for the whole game. So it took me about 5.5. So I'm right in line with that, and I did everything possible. Now, technically, I did not 100% tape 1 because I missed some of the recordings throughout the game. Now, let me tell you something, okay? What is this game actually about? What do you actually do? A lot of this game is kind of fluffed up in terms of length, okay, through the collectibles. So it's got like a Max Caulfield type thing going on, and you as Swan are going to go around and you'll have boxes where you take recordings of certain things. So you can take recordings of like critters or things around a location or characters, and it'll tell you how many of how many. Okay, so you have to take 6 recordings of a scenic view, and you have to find those in the maps. Now, I'm saying that because that greatly extends this game. So while it did take me 5.5 hours, it actually could have taken me far less if I wasn't so anal about going around and just trying to freaking capture everything. And that is a cool part, okay? I think kind of walking through this game in the lens of, well, actually literally a camera, right? It actually kind of elevates Swan's character because you kind of really get into the type of character that she is, and she's a complex one, okay? I do think we'll talk about characters in a second. They created some interesting ones here for sure, but you really, I think, feel like her more than anything when you're walking around and you're just like recording everything. It's a little bit awkward, like a normal person or quote-unquote normal, right? Again, that's kind of a theme of this game. You would walk around and you're not going to be capturing every single second. You kind of want to live your life, but she's so focused on recording. And sometimes there's even comments from the other girls where it's like, hey, put the camera down. Hey, do this, do that. Where it's like they kind of respond to that stuff. So I just throw that in there because, well, what are you going to be doing in the game? Well, you're going back and forth, okay? This game is a time story, I guess, if you want to call it. You're going from the future to the past, to the past, to the future, over and over and over. And I will say that is immediately something that I don't think landed, and I'll tell you why. It happens so much. So you can literally be doing 4 or 5 minutes of a thing, and then it'll swap, and it'll swap again, swap. And I like the idea of going back and forth, and I do think generally there's good timing of when those swaps are happening, but they happen so fast, and I'm not kidding. There's got to be 20 to 30 times you're jumping between past and future in just 5 hours, okay? That's a lot of time, and it doesn't fully let you take advantage of the era that you're in, right? Like the time period that you're in. I feel like they should let us stay in the areas a little bit more, but it is like a complex storytelling thing because they're trying to wrap these mysteries and this drama and these characters getting together as a group. They're trying to do that in the past, then go into the future and say, hey, remember when we did this? Go back to the past, back, forth. And sometimes it's pretty messy, okay? So I would have just preferred that they did it less, not the idea. I like the idea of going back and forth, but just less times overall. You're going to be walking around, you're going to be interacting with objects, you're going to be making decisions with your choices, with what you're able to say. Now, I want to highlight that, so I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But beyond that, the recording, the collectible stuff is a major portion of the actual gameplay elements of this game. So that's why it just takes so long to to talk about it. Just because if you don't do the recording stuff, you have have to do it in some portions, okay? It's like an objective. You've got to record characters doing a certain thing. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be good. In fact, when you watch things back, they can look downright terrible. I will say that's almost kind of a charm of this game, but also very cringy. There's a couple things that are cringy about this game, but one thing is at some point you take a music video, you literally record a music video, and it's literally what you captured, okay? And I love that idea. Again, like super, super cool. Whatever you're doing, if you're zooming out, you're zooming in, you're crouching, you're standing, that's going to make its way into the music video. And again, cringe while also kind of being like endearing. The four girls are watching it, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my freaking life. Like, I did a terrible job, and it's awful. Like, this music video should embarrass anybody that would ever watch it. And because some of the stuff is automated versus, what you're doing, the girls are loving it, right? They're, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh, look at this shot. Look at that shot. That's the predetermined cutscene. They were always going to say that no matter if it was a masterpiece versus terrible. And again, I think that kind of leans into just what they're trying to do with this game, while also being pretty hilarious because it was atrocious. And I don't care if you're a 16-year-old girl. I really don't care who you are. If you watch that video, you are not enjoying it as much as those girls did. Now, I want to go back to the talking, okay? Because obviously in a game like this, they talk a lot. The story and characters are some of the most important parts to it, and we're going to get there as well. This is going to be a long review, by the way. What I wanted to like is something I actually ended up not liking. And that hurt. That hurt me because I actually was saying it to a friend at the time, like, oh man, I really thought they would nail this and they did not. So what I'm talking specifically about, interrupting, okay? Now, it's something that everybody does in their day-to-day lives, right? I can't shut up. I talk so much, and, you have to interrupt me when you're talking to me. So, okay, what this game was going to do, and they promised, and they did deliver, it's just the execution was bad. You can cut people off. So there are times where you can let conversations go, and it'll give you like a countdown on what you're able to respond with. And you can pick your moments so that you're not really interrupting. Some of it, I do believe, is maybe a little bugs. There's some pop-ins in this game that are pretty terrible as well, and I did play with the newest version of the game, just so everybody's aware, or the version I was allowed to play as. There is pop-ins, and maybe that made its way into the dialogue, because there were some times where characters would legitimately talk over each other. And I'm talking about when you're just walking around, right? You're experiencing the environment. You're supposed to do an objective, but you can kind of do whatever. Characters will talk over each other, and it's bad. You can't hear either of them. One of the features that they talked about was literally interrupting in terms of the choices, okay? So again, if you pick your moments, it can work okay, but I actually don't love it. Like, I actually think, okay, well, when I think about interrupting, I think what the game misses is when you interrupt somebody, there's a little bit of like the first person that gets interrupted. They might say one or two words over the person that is interrupting, and then they'll stop, right? Or they'll stop on a dime. I'll be talking, you'll interrupt me, and I'll stop immediately so you can talk. So there's this kind of flow to it. The game does not do that. The game overlaps too much. So the game will say, okay, they're talking, they'll finish the sentence as you're talking. So it's not one or two words. It's not you cutting them off on a dime. Sometimes it is, but not every time. Sometimes it's, okay, I'm going to interrupt you, but you're going to keep saying your sentence, and now I can't hear either of you. So I say that because that does happen quite often. It's a main feature of the dialogue. Again, I don't think it's a bug. I think there are moments of it being bugged, but I think that's just like a general feature that did not play out as well as I thought it would in my head. Going in, I was excited. I was like, oh yeah, interrupting each other, cutting each other off, love it. But actually how it plays out is not what I thought it was going to be, okay? Now, some things I have not yet talked about would be the visuals. Just kind of want to throw that out there. I think this game looks really, really nice. This is where visuals and sound, I think, is where it very much reminds me of Life is Strange. Again, that kind of evolution, because you see it with, like, double exposure. I do think these are what those games would have looked like if they had this technology, if they were able to do it. There is something forever special about how those games, just in the facial models and stuff, how they look, okay? I don't actually think they can ever really be beaten in how much I love them, but this, I think, looks really, really nice. The characters look great, and by the way, they're not, like, beautified. Like, these are 16-year-old girls, right? They have acne, they have quirks about them, they have, they're a little off in some ways, a personality kind of things. Like, they're teenage girls, and I actually think they did, for the most part, a pretty good job. Actually, I would say this. for, I don't know who necessarily, like every single person who wrote this game, but I have an 11-year-old daughter. I feel like they did nail that cringe that, at times, right? But just kind of the angst of like a teenage girl. There are some times where the voice work is pretty bad, and I'm thinking specifically with a couple characters, and I'll let you guys maybe experience it, but I'm thinking a couple characters in this game are not voiced to the level that other characters are voiced. That's just me personally. I do think Nora very much resembles Chloe, so there's if you care about that kind of stuff, if you're looking for like kind of almost stereotypes, but okay, well, what have they created before? Are they still sticking to that stuff? Nora is very much like a Chloe equivalent type character in this game, which I find really, really cool. There's Easter eggs, one in particular I can think of, to Life is Strange, but overall, visual style, I think they do nail. Okay, they do a really good job of how it looks, how it sounds. Again, most characters are good. Some of them I just don't think the voice work is as good as the others. The music, phenomenal. This very much reminds me of Life is Strange. You have those kind of indie, whatever kind of genre band you're talking about. Now, they're more into like punk rock type things in general. There's mentions to like Nirvana and stuff on different tapes and whatnot, which I think is really cool. But, I think they did such a freaking good job. And I'll say this. Their singing is pretty terrible, okay, when they're actually a band in the lore and they're playing music. Their singing is awful, but the guitar playing and the actual music, super, super good. And again, like, I'm not saying terrible in that you hate to hear it and you just don't want to hear it. It's what I imagine a 16-year-old girl, if they formed a girl band and they performed, they're not going to freaking be, Taylor Swift on center stage and stuff. So, I can accept what they're going for. I'm just saying, like, the vocals are pretty bad, but I think they're purposely bad. The music itself is phenomenal. The backing tracks, when it kind of peaks, right, when like the emotion or there's a big scene and there's music in the background or sound effects, super, super good. Honestly, I think it's the best part of the game. I really do. When they nail the music, it is the best part that they've created in this game so far. Okay, I haven't talked about story and characters yet because I do think, maybe not characters, but the story is the weakest element of this game that I'm really disappointed that is actually the case. So here's the problem, okay? Without spoiling, this is hard. It's hard because without spoiling it, you have to be careful what you say. This game is very much set up as a two-parter, okay? And it's set up as, okay, we're really going to lean into like the girl bond. We're going to make these characters come together, and then we're going to start introducing supernatural stuff and pushing it into the more, kind of crazy, okay? Those are the two kind of elements. Now, what Tape 1 does is pretty much only solidifies these girls. Now, it's not necessarily like the greatest thing. Like, you're playing 5 hours of 4 girls that are all kind of weird in their own way, coming together and becoming friends. And it's like, that's fine, but at the same time, that is the central and here's what I'll say. It's not strong enough to carry a 5-hour game, okay? That, from the bottom of my heart, I think is how I want to say it. It's fine. It's not bad. I get their building. Again, I think an issue is, okay, we have to do the past, then we have to do the future, and we're setting up these dynamics between these characters in one timeline, then we're jumping and they're reminiscing on something, and you go back, forth. I think because of that, they don't even focus as heavy as they maybe should on getting these characters together because they're telling two different like timeline stories, if that makes sense, okay? But I think from the bottom of my heart, the point is I don't think it's strong enough to carry a game. The characters aren't that good, okay? None of the characters, all 4 of them, are not that good that you say, oh, that's a character of the year. That's one of the best characters that we've seen in gaming. This is not Max and Chloe, so you don't have that strong of a... And I say that kind of on purpose. That relationship is iconic to so many people. The characters of... At least for me, like, I love Max and Chloe. Max is one of my all-time favorites in any game. There's no character with that amount of like depth that really pulls me in and really makes me care about that character. None of these 4. And so... when you made a decision, you made the decision to focus 95% on just the bond of the girls, and there's nothing else happening. Okay, now there's like the story there, very reminiscent of Life is Strange. I think I can say this because this is it's like a central thing to the game. Swan is moving. So Swan is literally going to leave and go to Canada at the end of like the summer vacation. So like this is it. And she's a loner and she doesn't have boyfriends. She doesn't have friends. She gets together with this group of girls and they start bonding. They go to like a cabin in the woods woods type thing. They hang out. That's pretty much it. Okay, that's actually the entire first tape is that. And then in the future, you find out, okay, there's something going on with that summer. They basically erase their own memories for some reason. They can't remember certain elements of it. So they're basically telling the story. And then they'll fill it in a little bit in the future. They'll say, that was such a funny moment. Then they'll go back and they'll show that funny moment, or it was already shown, and then they're talking about it. That's the premise. It's not strong enough, again, to carry an entire game. And the issue is, when you're talking about the supernatural elements to it, now that's tape 2. They introduce it at the very end. The very end of tape 1 is where they start getting a little mysterious, where things start to get, this is not just 4 girls bonding at a cabin, this is something more to it. That does not happen until the and I'm talking about like the last 20 minutes of tape 1. Now, the issue with that, again, is that you rely very heavily on the characters and the story and the bond in this game, in this first part, right? First half. Not strong enough. Now, that's why I focus the way I focus this review on it. To me, and this is probably not how it's supposed to go, so that's why I think I'd be a little bit more negative than positive. Because even if tape 2 delivers, tape 2 has to do so much now in terms of solidifying the bond and kind of concluding the sister arc, like all of these characters, together having this bond. You have to hopefully have already gotten us to like buy in to that relationship, which I'm like 75% there, so they almost have. But there has to be now like an actual conclusion to it, okay? That's one part. And then you got to come in really swinging with whatever the heck is going on with the supernatural stuff, because right now, it's not all that interesting. And there is more. I don't want to spoil certain things. There is like one other big thing in tape 1 towards the end that I won't say. That can have a, ripple effect in tape 2. Bottom line, they gotta deliver with tape 2. That's supernatural. I personally can kind of predict where this is going, and I don't think it's all that grand. Now, maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe when I see it in tape 2, it'll kind of resolve itself and it'll make sense in the type of game that they're trying to make. But I feel like I know where they're going, and it's not like the biggest thing of all time. And I think they really got to come in hot for tape 2 in order to make tape 1 even worth it. So they've got something. I will say, though, I'm trying to give them while also being critical. All this kind of stuff is going on in my head right now. This is not nearly as strong enough as I thought it was going to be. I think Banisher's Ghost of New Eden as a Don't Nod title is about 1,000 times better than this game. Again, Life is Strange. We're not, right now, tape 1, we are not talking about the best of Don't Nod. And that actually hurts more than anything, because I didn't expect this game to beat those 2 games. Those are elite games to me. But I expected this game to be pretty darn good. I would put this with the other pretty fine games that Don't Nod made as of now. I would put this, like, Tell Me Why is actually a pretty okay game. This is a pretty okay game. You know what I mean? So we're not talking about the best of the best, but we're not talking about garbage. We're not talking about a bad product here. I was hoping they would come in really swinging, and this would be like a massive hit immediately. And the thing is, you can say, well, you have to wait for tape 2. How many people are going to play tape 1 and be willing to wait and get into tape 2? You got to think about that, okay? So from me as a reviewer perspective here, I do have to dock tape 1, because it's like, if you play tape 1, you might not care to play tape 2 because tape 1 could have scared you off, or it could have not been what you were looking for, whatever. You've got to think about that, especially when you separate your game into halves. They did nail some stuff. The story is okay enough. It's got some building foundation. I think if this was the first third of the game, it probably would have given me more hope, but now we're half. We're at the halfway point. You only got one more half. So unless they really hit that ignition, it's not going to be exactly what I thought. So they got potential. They got a solid foundation, but a lot is riding on tape 2. That's how I would leave this review. That's how I'll leave it with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.